It's a hard day's late night with Ira. Every night it's feeling alright. It's a hard day's late night with Ira. Why not come over tonight? We talk about everything under the moon. Your favorite cartoon or song you love. You never really know just how it might go. Why don't we get things started? It's a hard day's late night with Ira. It's a hard day's late night with Ira. It's a hard day's late night with Ira. A hard day's late night with Ira.
Tonight's episode of A Hard Day's Late Night with Ira is brought to you by our new sponsor, the Queens County Board of Tourism. And of course, you know their slogan, Queens, huh? You're taking a chance. The Queens County Board of Tourism. Thanks, guys.
As a close friend of the band, Severo Jornacion had been tight with the Smithereens for some time before he found himself the permanent replacement for their original bassist Mike Mazzaros in 2005. Mike has recently returned to playing with the band live, but in Smithereens lore, Severo will forever be known as the Thriller. First of all, I don't remember, where did we meet when I was a roadie with the Smithereens?
Yes, I met you during, it was a date with the Smithereens in the Midwest.
A date with the Smithereens tour, which would have been in 1993 or 4?
I'm not sure. I remember it was
around that time.
Yeah, it was around Indianapolis.
So, okay, Indianapolis. So you were in Indianapolis at the time?
Yes, I flew out to Indianapolis. It was Indianapolis, one other place, and then Chicago, and we stayed over while they flew out to do a video to L.A.
Oh, wow. Okay. So now, knowing that, and so tell me, now back up, and tell me give me your, like, where did the Smithereens enter your life? How did that, where did they, tell me the whole story running up to that point.
I first saw them at the Greek Theater here in Los Angeles. They were opening for Los Lobos.
Wow. Yeah. And had you heard them on the radio or anything?
Yeah, I heard, actually a friend of mine gave me, especially for you, on cassette.
Yeah.
And he told me when he gave that cassette to me, he said, I think, he asked me if I heard of the band called the Smithereens. I said, no, but I like the name.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
So he said, here's a tape of them.
Right. Okay. So you hadn't heard them on the radio, and so that was the first album, and I guess you liked it a lot.
Well, when I first heard the first song, "Strangers When We Meet," it just killed me.
Oh yeah.
It was like,
that's my story.
Like da 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 da, and I go, that's it.
Yeah.
They got me. They fucking got me.
It's so funny because I have exactly the same story, because my first memory involving the Smithereens, and maybe I had heard, I was thinking about this just yesterday as I was considering like my history with them and where did they come onto my radar. I have a very specific memory. It's like, you were when, people say like I knew where I was when Kennedy got shot, or you remember where you were when they hit the towers. And I remember where I was when I first heard the Smithereens. It's really weird. I was in my mom's car. I was driving up Woodhaven Boulevard toward my house, and onto the radio, I must have been listening to, I'm guessing it was probably WNEW in New York would have been the station that played them.
Okay.
It was, I'm trying to imagine what station, but it was probably NEW. They championed local bands.
Yeah, it sounds like would be right. It wouldn't be any of the other ones. I mean, I can't think of.
Right, but it wasn't. It couldn't have been a mainstream hit, because did they ever release that song as a single? Because I don't know if it was a single.
Was the college radio out there too?
Right, it could have been LIR, for example, right? Or it wouldn't have been PLJ. That was too mainstream, I think. But it could have been LIR, NEW. Anyway, however it was, whatever station, I was driving in my mom's car, and that song came on. I'm like, who are these? This is the greatest song I've ever heard in my life. To this day, I get chills thinking about it. Such a great song. I loved them immediately. And then it's probably that had to have been like 93-ish, two. When was that album released?
Especially for You was 1986.
86. Oh, it was much earlier than that. Oh, wait, I've got my timeline all wrong. Hold on. 86?
Yep, first album. is
Yeah, I guess
54.
right. Exactly. My timeline is all skewed. I'm thinking about it in terms of my own relationship with the band. I forgot there was like a 10-year history before I came in. Like, yeah. So yes, of course. So I must have heard it somewhere in the 80s, and then I loved it. And then, some time went by, and then Kevin called me, who I had met because he was a roadie for the Fuzz Tones when I joined the Fuzz Tones. And he said, I'm doing, he knew I was kind of like out of work. I was between bands. And he said, you want to do this one-off gig? You want to just do drum tech for Dennis? And I said, yeah, what do I got to set him up and tune drums? I can do that. So I figured it would be fun. And I met them, and I think they were hilarious. And then I guess, I guess I must have passed the test, and I did another gig here. And, it was like one-offs, whatever that period was. And maybe I'm saying this was probably 1993-ish. I was looking back at their history sort of online, trying to sort of get a handle of what was going on in their career at the time. And this was kind of a turbulent period, right? They made a date with the Smithereens, but they were like the label at Capitol. They had been on Capitol, but Capitol was about to drop them. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think so.
Because I think what I remember being on the road when they were sort of in the middle of the tour, dropped by Capitol, and that had to have been was that in '93? I think.
Okay. It was those two guys from Cleveland that was running who's the tour manager at that time?
Oh, that's a great question. There was Craig. There was a guy, right? There was two Cleveland guys running their. There was a tour manager, and there was a guy. He was kind of a military guy. He had really long hair.
Yeah. Right.
Steve, I think was his name. He was kind of a Steve. If his name wasn't Steve, his name should have been Steve.
McClymonds.
That's exactly right, Steve McClymonds. What a character! And Kevin and I, at first, Kevin, we really rubbed him the wrong way because he was actually military. I think he was ex-military, and or he sort of thought he was, but no, I think he was ex-military. And Kevin and I were very like, hey, fuck you, whatever. And so he didn't like our lax attitude. We were a little bit too leisurely, as Prince said, but But I think once Pat told him to stand down, I think we started to get along pretty well. Yeah, McClymonds was a character. So yeah, that was an interesting time, and So he brought me on board, and I guess I started to tour with you guys, and then them at that time, and
right.
Because I want to get to that story later. Actually, another part of this separately is I want to talk about how your relationship with the band, how you sort of transition from being a fan to being a member, which is a really interesting story, and I want to get to that because it's so great. But that was a tough time for them. That was a really hard time for the band. They were coming off a big high, and they were a little bit depressed, I think. They knew things were not good, I think, with their label. And
yeah, well, after 11, they wanted a bigger hit than 11.
Right, sure. Yeah, it's hard, yeah.
And they didn't deliver. Yeah. They said, fuck them, they're out. That's the way it works.
That's showbiz.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, it's hard. It's hard on a band. It's hard, you have an ego, and they had a huge success, which, it's fucked up. I think about this all the time because I would watch Mike. I suspect you recall these things too, where Mike would get very, very angry. He would never hurt anybody, but he would get really angry. Do you recall this?
Well, I know that Pat and Mike never really got along as you would think.
Yeah, I guess you never saw it, because I was kind of living with them 24 hours a day. So occasionally Mike would, over something or another that sometimes it was obvious what it was, and sometimes it was very unclear what it was, he would get super crazy angry and scare the shit out of everybody because he was just like he was ready to kill somebody. Because, he would just get a look. It was like he would radiate anger. And he would never, Mike was kind of a puppy dog. He would.
There you go. Yeah, he had a nervous energy about him.
Yeah, and, and it would flash very angry. Sometimes, this is the classic story. I was on the tour bus with Pat and a friend of his in some town somewhere I think it was probably I don't know where it was, Anywheresville, USA. And Pat had a friend of his on the bus, and they were just shooting the shit, talking about music or whatever they're talking about, and they were talking about all kinds of bands. Modern bands of that time, and this ancient time, back in the 90s. And then Mike sort of pokes his head through the doors of where the bunks are, and he catches my eye, and he goes, "Ira, come in here." I'm like, oh, "Okay," and I get up and I walk with him back through the bunk area to the little back lounge. And he closes the door and he looks at me and he says, "Who's that guy out there with Pat?" I'm like, I don't know, Mike. I think he's just, he's a friend of Pat's. He's just, some guy and works at the radio station. I don't know who he is. So why is he talking about the Stone Temple Pilots on my bus? I'm like, I don't know, Mike. Yeah, why is he, that was what he said to me. I swear to God, why are they talking about the Stone Temple Pilots on my bus? Like, he was offended that the words Stone Temple Pilots were even spoken aboard his, that's the kind of thing that he would find somehow something to take umbrage at. He wanted to lash out, and he'd find something to hang his little ideological hat on.
Wow.
Like, I remember them having arguments about, they would have arguments about producers, like, we could get this producer, or we could get this guy, like some famous American producer and some even more famous English producer. And Mike would be the guy who would say something like, I don't want some fucking English guy producing a record, totally dismissing some like huge, famous, British artist, a record producer who I don't remember the guy's name. But, he would just dismiss it out of hand because they were, he was very opinionated, and it could be really very, very difficult.
Look the way he was as a player. That translated into his personality
and then that's a very interesting. Well, that's a great part of this story, and that how his volatile personality translated, how he was able to use this aggression that he clearly was full of. He sort of was able to use the bass and the performance of the show as a means of exorcism. So he would fully, he would fully commit to this full body kind of like, like the bass, as you recall, ultra loud. I sat behind his amps every night. He was a loud player. He played 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 Guildhart-Key 4x10 cabinets with Galleon crew.
What?
There was 8. They were Guildhart-Key. Each they were a square cabinet. Each cabinet had 4 10-inch speakers in it. So it was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There was 8 of them, 4 across and 4 across of these square Guildhart-Key cabinets. 8 Guildhart-Key cabinets with 2 Galleon.
32 speakers.
Yes, with 32 10-inch speakers.
32 10-inch speakers.
It was a
320
very powerful,
320
very powerful. A lot of low end, but a lot of mid range. He was a very mid rangey player, and the Galleon and the 2 Galleon Krugers on top, and that system was so loud. But at the same time, Pat and Jimmy had to arm up too, because I remember both of them carrying. I think both of them had double half stacks. Marshall. I don't know if they had full stacks or half stacks. I think they both had double half stack.
Jesus.
But they had a lot of gear. They were loud. They were a loud band. And, Dennis, of course, a very powerful, loud drummer. But, man, the amp situation, I remember, me and Kay me and Chopper, we would roll those things in and out. Because I'm trying to remember all the shows that I played. And I have some old calendars that have maybe shows I played in 95 with them, but not the ones I did in 94.
When I came on saw you did the encore. You played the encore.
Right. I started to do that. I guess I don't know how long I've been with them, but Dennis, knew I was a drummer. He'd heard me play, and so I guess he trusted me enough that he would let me come up for the encore, and he would go down and sing "Little Sister" by Elvis Presley, and run around.
Either that or one night with you.
One night with you, yeah. Yeah, he would have a grand old time.
One night
with you. Oh man, he had a ball, and I had a ball too. So yeah, and I not only did I get to roadie and watch these guys like pound it out every night, which was really inspiring, and sitting at Dennis's, bowing at his throne every night, watching him, lay into that kit every night, with steady concentration. Full commitment. That's what I learned from the Smithereens about being in a band. This sort of full body, no matter how bad the day was, or if they've been fighting, or if they were, upset about this, that, or the other thing. When the lights went up, and they had all plugged in, and they hit the chords, and they hit the riff. All was good. And, Mike was able to work it out, and everyone had a great time. And there was, 2 hours of like full release, and everyone was happy and sweating. And then, tomorrow's another day. That's what I learned from watching the Smithereens, that sort of day after day, audience after audience. I'd never seen a band do that night after night. I'd seen shows here and there, and I'd never experienced, I'd gone on tours for a week or two. Yeah. Once or twice, but to see a band like the tour I did with them in '95 was like almost it was like almost 2 or 3 months long.
Yeah,
It was
that was with Merman.
with Mark Merman. Yeah, I should talk to him too. I'm thinking about getting him on the phone. Would he remember anything? How's his memory?
Oh,
he's like the dude.
He's got a mind like a steel trap. You kidding me?
He has a great memory, doesn't
he?
he?
Knows all that shit.
Because he's to me, like, when I think about like who I know who's like Jeff Bridges and in Lebowski, Mark Merman, who was always, I think, was he not always in a pair of those sort of loose beach pants? He always was there wearing those things. He's so the dude.
And he was there for all that shit.
Right.
So, you know.
You know what here's my favorite Mark Merman story. He says to me, I was working for Guns N' Roses. I was a security guy for Guns N' Roses. So you know the story is going good already. He goes, I was working for security for Guns N' Roses. We're playing like at Madison Square Garden. And the band are like in a hotel somewhere midtown. And we get a call from Slash. Slash goes, where's Road Case 53? And everyone's like, the tour manager's like, Road Case 53. Well, what's that? What is that, Slash? He goes, but Road Case is supposed to come up to my hotel room every time. Road Case 53 is not in my room. Everything else is here. And so they track down, they have to go through the list and like, okay, 53. Okay. Well, it usually gets loaded. What happened? So they call the venue they played at, whatever, in Philly the night before. And they look around and they find case 53. It didn't get loaded for some reason. And Slash is like, Slash is like, no case. If I don't get road case 53, there's no show tonight. So they said, okay, what's the quickest way to get road case 53 to Slash in New York from Philly? They hire a cab, they throw it in a cab, and some schmuck has to drive from Philly with road case 53 in his back seat to Madison Square Garden or wherever, the hotel in Midtown, deliver road case 53, which it turns out, when they got it up to his room and they opened it up, it was a case, it was like one of those foam, road cases where you would fit an instrument in it. But instead of the foam cutouts were all for Jack Daniels bottles. It was his personal Jack Daniels road case.
Great.
That would have held the whole show. They had to drive the Jack Daniels road case from Philly. So that was the kind of story like that. Mark was full of stories like that. Now, one of the things I thought was really interesting with them. One of the things I upon joining the band, realized that the Smithereens had a kind of an in language. They sort of spoke. They had a couple of like things that they like nicknames, like Tex.
Yeah.
Did Dennis have a nickname? He never had a nickname, did he?
Spike.
Of course, Spike. And did Mike have a nickname?
What?
Did Mike have a nickname when he was in the band? I don't remember that.
I don't think so.
I don't think so either. Spike. Yeah, I forgot. Dennis was called Spike, and he was Tex. Pat didn't have his own nickname, did he?
And what was Pat? So it's just Patty?
Which I don't know.
No,
I never know.
Patty.
I've never heard anyone call him anything other than Pat or Hey You Asshole. But that was it, Pat. So Spike and Tex. And then when you joined the band, they gave you
The Thriller.
The Thriller, which is hilarious because if you are
The Thriller.
from, well, that's because your background. Is it because you're a Filipino background? Is that why they gave you The Thriller?
That's part of the Smithereens presentation.
Right.
The persona.
Right.
So there you go.
No, it's hilarious. But did they pick that Thriller because of The Thriller from Manila? Is that why they picked it? Was it?
That's what. It's not they. It's Pat.
Oh, it was Pat. Okay. Well, yeah, Pat. They.
Let's give credit
where
where
credit is due.
All right.
All right.
Those three other guys did nothing.
That was his sense of humor. He had an amazing. I got to say, I have rarely seen a performer on stage, and you saw this night after night too. When you see, okay, so I'm going to back off and pretend that suddenly we have an audience, and I have to explain to people that while you were a fan of the band, you then at one point transitioned into being a member of the band. So one point, Mike, the original Mazzaros, up, and for whatever reason, we don't have to get into it. He's like, okay, I'm out. So did they like go through 1,000 guys and like, no, we're letting Severo do it? Do you know the process by which you became the replacement bass player?
Well, this is what I recall was when Pat was telling me that they asked Don Dixon if he knew of any bass players.
Sure.
And Don Dixon recommended this guy named Jamie Hoover out of a band called the Sponge Tones in Virginia.
Oh, I've heard of them. Sure. Yeah.
So,
but they didn't like this guy. Did they audition him?
I don't know. I think they just asked him if you could fill in for a gig or two or whatever,
right.
And then Pat would get me on board, saying and tell the guys that, well, look, we're going to do this show in San Diego. They did the street scene,
Right.
97, I think.
Yeah. Right.
And Pat told them that we could save money on the fare if he just comes out, if he comes down to San Diego and does a show.
Right, sure. Because you don't have to fly someone in. Someone's already there.
Yeah. So, maybe Pat didn't like Jamie as a.
Okay, but Pat was a friend of yours. Like Pat liked you and knew you were a bass player.
Yeah, so I met them back after the Roxy shows.
Right. So he kind of like he had you in mind, you think, and he sort of like angled you into the band.
Yeah, I think yeah. He wanted to convince the guys that I would,
And how long do you think? Like, how long was your break-in period?
I'm not sure. Really, I just did my thing for the band, and
Right, because it's tough, when you replace somebody who's been like those guys were like childhood friends. So to bring someone in, that's gotta be hard. That's gotta be hard on like you. That must have been kind of difficult.
Well, that was I was replacing somebody in family.
Sure. Yeah, that's a hard thing to do. Yeah, but you're like such a pleasant person. Like I can't imagine them being, oh yeah. I mean, how could they not? Eventually go like, oh yeah, well this guy's great. Okay, yeah, we like him in our band. He's a good guy. That's because in the long run, like, that's what you want in your band, just like nice guys. And you could certainly qualify as that.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's like I try to bring that same kind of energy that Mike brought, but sure. I mean, obviously, it's my thing.
Yeah, no, you can't fake that. That's the kind of thing that Mike.
It's from Mike, and there's no negative shit in my.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But what you brought was again like a joy. Like I think you brought the joy of someone who loved the band, and suddenly it was a playing in the band. That's what I saw. Like someone who like. It's kind of like one of those stories where, like, Keith Moon falls off the drum set, and Pete pulls somebody. Hey, anybody play the drums?
Yeah, well, the thing is with playing with this band, it's like Pat told me from the very beginning. You got to bring it. You got to own it.
Yeah, you got to dig in.
He's absolutely correct.
Yeah. You have to power it in. Those those are hard shoes to fill. But because no one really plays exactly. No two people play the same way, even if you're trying to emulate someone's style. But no, you had your own style, and I think that's what I liked about you. You were, Mike could be Mike with all his power and all this sort of this like high energy thing could also be kind of overpowering and sort of distracting in a way. And you were never that. You always really blended in beautifully with those guys, and the songs really came up beautifully. Nothing against Mike at all, who's his own kind of player, but so I think you were a great compliment with them. It really sort of made those compositions stand out. It was because it was not quite as aggressive, though. Obviously you played with passion and you played with, but you didn't play with the same kind of volume that that Mike played with, which could be overbearing at times. It could be it could be painful at times actually.
I really don't know what was going on in Mike's head, and that's not my.
Yeah, no, I don't want to analyze Mike. Mike was just, he was maybe going through a bad time or whatever. He seemed to be pretty happy, and I guess he left because he didn't want, the grind of being on the road is tough, and it's emotionally difficult.
And, Plus it was, his kids were just starting to,
Yeah.
They were born, basically.
Right.
So
right. His life was changing. That's what happens. Yeah.
I think him and Cindy had to talk about,
Yeah. I think Mike was basically unhappy. I think he loved being a bass player clearly, but I think being a bass player in that band on the road, I don't think that was making him happy. I think he was. That's my assumption that he was happier pursuing a new career that was a little more stable for him. I think that made him happier. I mean, I have to assume that made him happier.
And he was, him and Pat were always fucking, they always had that kind of dynamic.
Right. They were always, yeah, they were both egotists. Mike had a strong ego, but Mike was also very fragile. I think Mike's ego was also, easily fragile, and and he could collapse, very easily. He was that's why he would get so angry. I think he would because what I was going to say was that I recognized some of the behavior that I saw in Mike. At the time, which I thought was really remarkable, this kind of flashing anger, which you had to sort of try to calmly talk him down. You have to be a sort of psychologist to sort of, okay, Mike, just relax, it's okay, nothing's wrong. But he would like to rage. I think it was something he had to get out. And I myself exhibited very similar behavior myself. I've
seen him rage. It's not pretty. It's like, whoa.
No, it's scary because you just feel this aggressive attitude. Now, like I said, he would never hurt anybody. But when someone's angry around you and they're sort of radiating that kind of thing, and like I said, I've done it myself, and I think back on Mike and how he was, and times when I've done similar things on the road would get really frustrated at some dumb thing. I couldn't get the olive on the bread the right way, some Spinal Tap bullshit thing, where I would get ragingly angry about something wasn't set up the right way, and I would just lose my mind for like 5 minutes. And then I would go around and apologize to everybody. Sorry, everybody, sorry. You never got that from Mike. Some people rage and they never get an apology. I've learned over the years to rage and then apologize. I think it's an adult way to handle it. I haven't exhibited that behavior in quite a long time. I think I got a handle on it. I don't like to be that way on the road. It's no fun. It doesn't make anybody happy. So it's in check now. But yeah, I remember doing that for it happened to me on occasions on the road where I just would catch up to you and I would think about Mike and I saw him do the same thing and it was terrifying, and it made me kind of like think about myself, like, oh man, I shouldn't be this way because it was no fun when Mike did it. It can't be any better when I'm doing it. So so that's an interesting part of the story for me too, this sort of connection between Mike's behavior and my own. But mostly what I learned about was this sort of camaraderie that transcends all this other stuff, like the camaraderie of the band playing night after night in front of the audience that loves them. That was the main impetus, the zen of the Smithereens, this sort of, get up on stage, plug it in, turn it up, the classic rock and roll aesthetic, and they lived it and they breathed it, and every night they never played a kind of sort of half-assed show. Every night was great. They leaned into it. They came off stage sweating and smiling every night, for the most part that I remember. Even when things were fucked up.
They were that type of band, which a lot of people don't realize. That type of band is the band you love to see a lot because they,
Yeah, they deliver.
It's a little, yeah.
Yeah. And
they can.
And also you forget, I think most people don't really realize how many hit songs those guys had, one after another. It was like an armload. There's 7 or 8 really recognizable songs that when people maybe don't realize, now maybe I know 1 or 2, and then they would go to a show and oh man, I knew half those songs. He was a really good songwriter.
I see people, they look around and go, he did that one?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, their songs are the kind of things, when you hear them the first time, you feel like you've known them for a long time. They all sound like old friends by the time you get to the second chorus. That's why he was such a good songwriter. He kept it simple, emotional but simple. And he didn't fuck around. He don't bore us, get to the chorus. He was I remember I remember asking him once about writing. We were talking about songwriting, and he had a little apartment down on the Lower East Side where I suspect part of what he did there was write songs, though I'm sure he got up to some other. I'm sure he did plenty of stuff there. But one of the things he did was write songs there, and he described it as I said, what's your method? What do you do? He goes, I call it ass in chair. I put my ass in the chair and I sit there until I've written a song. You just got to sit down and do it. He had a very workman ethic about writing a song, and I love to talk about songwriters about how they write. It's kind of a magical process. Some of them can't really describe it. I remember Pat telling me that there were albums where I guess they had written the album and they'd recorded all the rhythm tracks, but he had not finished all the lyrics. And he would come in during the day and write the lyrics in minutes before they would roll. And he would just write them.
Yeah.
And a lot of them he didn't remember because of his drug use. He claimed he didn't even remember writing entire albums worth of songs. He goes, I don't know, Green Thoughts. I don't know. I don't remember writing any of those lyrics. I'm
holy shit.
So, yeah, maybe it wasn't Green Thoughts. It was one of the first couple of records. He goes, I don't remember I don't know. I can't remember how it happened. Because like they were so high, but he did like, I don't know, that's the genius, right? Like somehow it still made it work.
Well, it's a genius, but it's the way he approached his songwriting. He waits until the fucking last minute when he has to.
Yeah. But I think that was probably part of his skill set, like this ability to sort of like make something really good under pressure. And I think, that's what happens when you do something last minute, you are pressuring yourself. He knew he obviously had days, weeks, probably months to write whatever that lyric was. I mean, I'm sure they didn't write that song 5 minutes before, but yeah, let's say he had days and weeks to write it. Yeah, but the pressure of like going in, I know there's a lot of guys who do that. They just walk in, they're like, I'm gonna do something real fast and not really think about it too hard. And that works for some guys. Some guys obviously are more particular, and they got to pour over every word. But for some guys that works, and I got to say, for his simple style of songwriting, it worked. Like he was still able to write beautiful, emotionally straightforward songs. Those are albums full of beautiful, and the ones that people don't know, Deep Black. There's so many great deep album tracks. They're just gorgeous.
Yes.
Arranged, sort of like the Birds and and Buddy Holly. They have so many so many classic things in there.
All them kind of open chord riffs are they're kind of like reminiscent of what Matthew does too. Those chords that
there's a lot of open strings.
Yeah,
like using a droning string. Yeah, if you can use a droning string and a chord progression, it's makes it usually an interesting sound if you can do it. Matthew goes out of his way, I think, to find those kind of open string tunings because it can make interesting dissonance. Because we don't mind dissonance a little bit too. There was no dissonance really in the Smithereens, but yes, exactly that same sort of style of using that. It's very emotional.
Deep Black. That deep black.
Exactly. That's a beautiful. That's kind of like it's a classic, like a Harrison-esque sort of riff, or a McGuinn kind of riff. I love that. It's very simple because it's just it's such a simple.
It is simple. Yeah. That's what a lot of people don't get.
Yeah.
It's like some people try and overanalyze it. It's fucking simple.
Yeah. Exactly. That's what I loved. That's another aspect too. Because they were so. It was such a direct thing. It was a rock band, amplifiers, guitars, and songs. It was very direct and very simple. And the Smithereens exemplified that. The simplicity in their songwriting and everything about them was kind of bare bones in a way, but like super powerful and super direct. They were. Yeah, there's just, I don't know. I feel like bands like that, they're few and far between. And I feel I was really lucky to, like, for all the bands that I could have ended up working for through my friend Kevin, all the bands that I could have, because Kevin worked for like King Diamond and all kinds of crazy ass bands. But he pulled me in to a band that I really...
He worked for too, right?
Say what?
He worked with Moby.
He toward the end of his life, he worked for Moby. Yeah, so he worked with all kinds of artists. But I don't think I would have had a good time working for Moby. That didn't seem like a real fun time to me. I'm glad he pulled me on with the Smithereens, which was it was kind of more a punk rock thing. I would imagine Moby was a huge production. I can't imagine what the production on a Moby tour would have been. Probably really. Yeah. Hard to imagine, considering and that's what I liked about, again, the Smithereens thing for me was learning how to tour. So the early tours were us in a van pulling a trailer full of gear, I guess. No, actually, you know what? The Smithereens would be in a van, and Kevin and I would go in a like a cube truck with all the gear in, and so we would drive in the cube truck with the gear, and they would drive from town to town in a van, and we would go to the venue first with the gear and unload it. So I was learning about touring, and my first tour bus tour was with them in a tour bus. But, so that to me was like, that was the big time. Like, oh, I'm on a tour bus. God damn it. So that was an eye-opening experience. And I'm glad that, I got into a band that eventually ended up also like touring regularly in tour buses. It was a really great learning experience, spending 2 summers, for months in this little coffin beds. Like, that's an acquired skill. Not everybody's going to get into that, That's a hard life for some people. I don't think they would dig it at all. But I loved it. I always loved it. The nomadic lifestyle. I dig it. I really liked it. And so
let me ask you this.
Sure.
Let me ask you this. Would Pat commandeer the front cabin?
The front.
Would that?
The front. You mean the whole front lounge?
Yeah, and with the TV on, with his watching, whatever.
Yeah, sure, but
It
he was the king of the bus. I mean, it was his fucking bus, wasn't it? I mean, he bought and paid for it. No, I mean, he was a commanding character. So yeah, he would probably plant himself in that front lobby and in that front room, and put on a movie. And yeah, I was very like him. I think to sort of sit there and watch sort of spread himself out on one of the benches and put a movie on and. That's Pat up and down. Was that typical for him when you guys were traveling?
Well, yeah. I mean, even when we were traveling in minivans or passenger vans, I'd be doing either me or Jimmy would be doing. I'd be doing most of the driving because I love driving.
Oh yeah.
And so Pat would always be in the front seat.
Right. Right. Yeah, he's the kind of guy who wanted to sit up. Yeah, some people get car sick if they don't sit in the front seat too. But yeah, some people really like once they get shotgun. See, and when we drove in a van, it was always Daniel because Daniel was a resident smoker, so he got to sit up in that front seat most of the time, so he could crack that window every 30 or 40 miles and smoke another American Spirit Yellow. So it was understood that Daniel got the front passenger seat. That hasn't changed at all. Say again?
Was Pat chain smoking back then too?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't really remember him chain smoking. I remember him smoking, but I don't remember it being a chain smoking sort of thing. And he had already started to sort of gain weight. He was already slightly overweight, I think. I don't have a picture in my mind. When I started working for them, he was a little overweight, but it got worse over those years. Obviously, as you watched, he gained another, I don't know how much weight he gained. And sometimes it was difficult. Like I wouldn't see him for a couple of years, and then I would see him at a show at like BB King's or something, and I would be amazed at how much how much weight he was carrying around on his body. Like he was always a big guy. Like his like thighs, like his arms, his arms were like my legs. The thickness of his arms. He was a very, very, always like a massive kind of guy. But he really put on so much weight at the end. It was really hard to watch. Well, he was, his mobility was severely, was bad. Yeah, but he soldiered through that last show that I saw him with. Down here in Florida, you guys came down and played, and that
was in what was that?
That was in St. Pete or something, or Tampa. I think it was Tampa, or it was something. I can't remember the name of the town.
Largo? Was it in Largo?
Largo. That's correct. Yeah, it was about an hour from me, and despite the fact that he couldn't really play the guitar, and he got up and sang the whole set, and he had a great time, and he still had his sense of humor about him, and that was going to say, like, his Pat's sense of humor was like I've rarely seen someone be able to ingratiate himself and manipulate an audience in a good way, the way he did. Like he was so in tune with how to, like, here's my favorite story. We're playing like some sort of dinner theater somewhere. I don't know where, Atlantic City, something like this. And so it's the stage, and then radiating out from the stage are just these long tables where you would put 8 people on each side of these long dinner tables. It was like a dinner theater thing. So everyone's sitting at these long tables, as I recall. They hadn't moved them out for the show. They were still sitting there. And maybe before the show, people were sitting there eating food. And then the show goes on, and people are still sitting at these tables. And in the middle of this, I'm sitting behind, but next to Dennis, and Pat catches my eye. And he says, Ira. And he motions to me to come out on the stage. They're in the middle of a song. And he leans in and know that, guitar, Jimmy's playing a solo or something. And he says, he leans into my ear and he goes, get 3 folding chairs. I'm like, okay, Pat. And I go backstage and I find 3 folding chairs. And as the song is ending, he says, come out. He motions me out. And he goes, give one to Jimmy and give one to Mike and put one under me. So I put one, gave him one, and I opened one for Pat, and I opened the other one for Jim and one for Mike. And he goes, okay, you guys sit down. So he had the three of them sat down in the chairs. And he looks at the audience and he goes, we're the Smithereens from New Jersey. And if you guys are going to sit down, we're going to sit down too. And he goes, 1, 2, 3, 4. And they launch into something like, I don't know, like Girl Like You, something with a big riff at the top.
Yeah.
You know, and the whole place is almost literally jumped up in the air. Like the power of them going, oh yeah, you're going to sit down? We're going to sit down too. And he just launched into the next song, and the whole audience went, oh, you're so right. And everyone got right up on their feet. And then, you know, by the second verse, the three of them stood up too. And it was so great the way he understood how to, you know, get the audience to sort of, come on, people, get into it. Like, stand up. And he did it all in one fell swoop, not by berating them or like chastising them or scolding them, or but by doing it in this really wonderful, humorous way, like, you know, like a really funny way to sort of point out to point it out. I don't know. I thought it was absolutely genius that he sort of in the moment came up with that idea. Maybe he had done that before. I don't know, but man, it was.
It sounds like a great idea.
Yeah, and it worked beautifully. It did exactly what he wanted it to do. Like, it got the whole audience up on its feet, and they were up on their feet for the rest of the show. It was great. But that was his genius. He knew how to talk to the audience in a very personal way. He was a good storyteller. You know, he was hilarious. I mean, he had a great rapport with an audience. I think Matthew also has made a point to make doesn't talk down to the audience. He talks to the audience in a very sort of a naturalistic kind of way. You know, it's funny, like one of the things that happened to me with the Smithereens in that short period was that, and I don't know if this is going in the podcast either, but the first time I ever smoked pot was on the bus with the Smithereens. Actually, it's a good story. I'm going to tell it, and it should go in there because it's a good story. They were having a hard time that year, and they were kind of down and out. And I think Mike might have not even been on the bus at this one particular point. And so the tension had been I was down a little bit because Mike was not there. And so Tex goes, I think I have a joint in my bunk. And it's me and Kevin and Dennis and Pat and maybe like McClymonds, who never would have smoked a joint. But Dennis and Pat were like, yeah, sure, yeah, go get it. And Jim got out, and I'm looking at Kevin. Kevin was pretty straight edge too. Kevin, I don't remember Kevin drinking. Kevin smoked cigarettes, but I remember Kevin was not into alcohol. I didn't drink either. I didn't take any drugs at the time. I didn't smoke cigarettes. I didn't drink beer, nothing. I was so straight. And this was the end of it right here. This is the story that ends my straightness. So again, like I said, now remember, Severo, I'm 30. I'm like 32 years old, right? This is 1994. Let's say it's 1994, right? That would make me 31 years old. So I was 31, and again, I've been in bands for years. I worked in nightclubs. I didn't start drinking. Actually, okay, I lie. I did start drinking alcohol when I was around 27, but I was not like into alcohol. Like, I wasn't a drinker. I didn't like getting drunk. And certainly like Smithereens, it was like beer everywhere. I don't even recall myself drinking beer. I don't remember it. I mean, I might have had one every now and then, but that was not my thing. But, and again, I didn't smoke cigarettes. So I hadn't smoked anything in my whole life. So Jim now comes out of the back lounge with the joint, and they light it and they pass it around. And they give it to me, and Kevin gives me a look, because Kevin was kind of like, I think Kevin thought of himself as my protector in a way, and he didn't want me to fall. I don't know. Something about Kevin was protective, I think, where I was concerned, and God bless him for that. I miss him. God, I wish he was still here. I wish I could interview him, because that would be great. But yeah, no, I miss him terribly. It's tragic that he's not with us. But so I get the joint, and I'm like, oh, okay, well, here we go. So I pull it, and I didn't know how to smoke, so I didn't really know how to like pull smoke into your lungs. So you have to learn how to do that, like to get that to sort of like just kind of like gasp air into your breath. But I got enough of it into my lungs that a few minutes later. Oh, so here's the story. As they smoked this thing, they had music on. They had the stereo on in the front lounge. And there was a handful of records we listened to that night. I think the first Joe Jackson record. I think there was I can't remember. There was a handful of an Elvis Costello record, I think. And there was a Live at Leeds by The Who. And when I smoked that joint, they were listening to Live at Leeds. And after, I don't know, a minute later after having smoked that joint, I'm standing there like waiting, to see what happens. And I'm listening to Live at Leeds, and I think to myself, wow, listen to the bass. And that's when I knew. I'm like, this is what happens when you smoke pot. You start to hear things in music that you never heard before. Other elements come out, things that were buried become unburied. I'm like, oh, is this what pot does? Fucking sign me up. This is the drug for me, you know? So I loved it. And I immediately became a huge pothead. No, that's not true. Because I was not a druggy kind of addictive sort of personality. I always kept all drugs at arm's length because I never want them to sort of take over my life. I smoke probably too much pot now, but hey, it's a pandemic and I have nothing to do. Okay. Don't judge me. So, I never, I would never want to be non-functional. And having watched guys like Pat, people who went too far and really fucked themselves up, abusing drugs and in a bad way. So I've had a lot of friends. It's always been a lesson for me. I never would want to abuse any drugs, but I'm also not afraid of drugs. Drugs are good in the right dosage. But every time I see Tex now, and he likes to bring this up because he likes to, and it's going to be a major topic of conversation. I'm going to have to edit back and forth between this, and because I'm going to talk to Tex about the same thing, and he'll remember it because he likes to he loves the fact that he was the guy who gave me my first joint. He's like, oh, I feel so bad about it. You don't feel bad about it. Give me a break. You love it. He loves it. He's hilarious. So I'm going to be happy to talk to Tex. I haven't talked to him in a while. He's such a great guy. And Dennis too, man. I miss Dennis. I haven't seen Dennis since, he would occasionally come to some of these Bambikino shows and we'd have him come do a song. So I think that was possibly the last time I saw Dennis. So I miss him a lot. And I miss you, brother. Yeah. I haven't seen you in way too long, man. I hopefully, I know there's some Not a Surf touring coming up. Hopefully we'll be out in your neck of the woods before too long.
I think we missed the last one you were on. What was the last time you were?
Yeah, we were out in January, and I think the tour started in January of 2021. And I think we had some LA dates. I think we did 2 nights at the Troubadour, if I'm not mistaken. But there was some, I mean, not that you would have made the Troubadour, but there was some other, there was a San Francisco show. I think there was a San Diego show. I can't remember now, but there were West Coast dates in January, February, something like that. And then, we would have gone there again. Had the year been a normal year, we probably would have ended up back on the West Coast again, in the fall. But it didn't turn out that way. So, we're going to have to make up for some lost time. Are you not doing any gigs at all with the Smithereens now?
No, because it's Mike's. Well, obviously there's no gigs we have right now.
Well, yeah, but Mike, for the time being, it looks like when they do gig, it's going to be with Mike.
So it's the 3 guys. They're having a good time.
Yeah, it's kind of a reunion for them, which is nice.
Well, yeah, I mean, I totally get it.
Sure. No, I know. Yeah, I know. It's not anything against you, obviously.
I talk to Cindy once in a while.
Yeah, no, I saw Cindy when last time I was in Frisco at the beginning of the year. Cindy came to the show. She's so great. She is so fantastic. She's so hilarious. Very funny girl. She was always. I love when she came out on the tour. She was so much fun to have around. It's good to have girls on there. When you're with guys like the Smithereens who can be really brutal. It was nice when their girlfriends and their wives came out. I really liked when Donna came out and Cindy came out.
Yeah.
And it would calm them down a little bit. Got them down to earth.
Of course. Oh, she's here.
Yeah.
Mellow out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've been playing shows with I found a little local cover band here, and through happenstance, they needed a drummer for something. And they said, "Hey, would you want to, sit in with us?" So occasionally, I think I have a show coming up next week or two. It's a little classic rock, country music cover band, local here in Florida. It's hilarious, really nice guys. But so I'm just get to be the drummer. I love, I don't advertise it because I feel kind of weird. Because in Florida, no one gives a shit. Everyone here is yeah, pandemic, schmandemic. Let's make out. In Florida, no one cares.
Yeah, no, That's your governor,
it's,
right
they're
there.
having that, well, and they're, that's like spring break now, and we're getting overrun. But anyway, so it's been pretty lax, and there've been bands playing, and these guys have been playing shows. I play the shows, but I don't tell anyone. I don't advertise like on Facebook, like, hey, I'm playing this show, everybody come down, because I feel weird about inviting people out to live shows. But eventually, I'll be okay with it. But I've played like 3 or 4 of these little gigs, and most of them are outdoors anyway. They're not like indoors in crowded places. A lot of them are outdoors. So. Playing like, Doobie Brothers and country songs. It's kind of great. I've never played in a cover band before like that. I kind of love it.
Really?
Yeah, it's kind of a fun. It's a different set of skills. Like, when I was in New York and I had downtime from Not a Surf, one of the things I would do is play with Joe McGinty in the Losers Lounge. And the Losers Lounge is, they're a cover band. Like they would cover 20 Queen songs or 25 Paul Williams songs, whatever. You had to learn other people's songs. And so there's a skill in learning other people's songs. Like you have to I'm trying to get the feel. It's fun. It's a fun thing for a drummer to try to get into the feel of different songs, disco songs and funk songs and country songs or whatever it is, and just, your job is to just try to get people to get up and dance, period. Like that's my gig. Like I'm the drummer, I'm the beat. The song starts going and everyone taps their feet or they don't. So, and that's on me. So it's not a difficult job, but it's a fun job. And I just like being like Ringo. Like I feel like if I'm not being the drummer in a band, I feel kind of like I'm useless. Like that's what I do. That's my function. So I've been enjoying those shows. I've been, and it's simple and fun and, low key, and they're nice. They're three really nice guys. And I think I might be the youngest guy in this band, which I haven't been the youngest guy in a band in a long time. So I'm kind of enjoying that aspect, being the young guy.
Yeah.
For a few years, I was always the youngest guy in the band. Like when the Fuzz Tones, I was like the young gun. That happened until in my 30s, and then I was the fucking old guy. I was the new old guy, but so be it.
Yeah.
But I'm excited. I'm Not a Surf is planning to go back to Europe there's a couple of things on the road, on the boards. Maybe if things go well, there's something. Daniel lives in Ibiza, so we might go there to do an outdoor show, which we'll sort of stream online in a beautiful venue if it comes through. And a couple of other sort of, we'll record a couple of things so we can use them to, for like later on, like streaming events until we can really get a full tour going again. And there's some European dates later in the year. I think there's a U.S. and European dates. Like, I can't remember now. They keep getting moved around. Like they keep shifting. So we'll see how it goes. But it's starting. We're starting to make solid plans to like, okay, it looks like it might be right here and going. Getting in a plane, flying to Spain. It's kind of daunting. I'm really not looking forward to the traveling part of it, but I am looking forward to playing shows. I'm really excited about that, man. It's going to be so thrilling, and I think it's going to be so thrilling to really get back into venues and play in front of audiences who've been deprived for a year and a half. I think it's going to be a love. I think people are going to like freak out. Yeah, I think it's going to be like a love fest. I know how it is with when for example, when Not a Surf plays in Paris, for example, it always feels like a homecoming. Like for some reason, there's a huge love fest between Not a Surf and Paris. And so the last shows we played there was like we played at the Bataclan where they had there was a terrorist attack there. We were one of the first bands to come back and play at the Bataclan, which was emotional for us. It was emotional for the audience, but it was like really. But that sort of emotional baggage made the show even greater. It was so good because everyone was so there. It was such a love thing between the audience and the band, and that's what any band wants. Is sort of like as soon as you walk onto the stage, like. You can do no wrong. The audience is like, they love you already. They love that you just walked onto the stage and you plugged in. They're already incredibly happy about that. Like that's the thing that's one of those great things about being in a band that gets to go on the road and tour like that is that moment of like just walking out, like, okay, go time. And those seconds as you walk from backstage out under the lights and get behind your instrument. I love that moment. That to me is like so epic. Can I tell you a true story? This is true. I'm not making this up. I was in a band in the 80s, and this band had a guy mentoring it. A guy who was sort of giving us advice about what to do. And this guy his name was Bill Aucoin. Do you recognize that name? Bill Aucoin?
What's that?
Bill Aucoin.
Oh, yes. Wasn't he the manager of Kiss?
Exactly. Bill Aucoin was Kiss's manager. And this is a whole podcast in and of itself. But one of the things there was a period where we were trying to get him to be our manager. We went to Los Angeles and he brought us into a rehearsal studio. And we were a young band. We were not signed. We were trying to get it together. And so he said, okay, well, we're going to do some stage work right now. So he goes, and so we'd had set up, some amps, and it was like one of these LA studios, like a stage where you would rehearse a show. And so there was a stage set up, and there was a back line and a drum set, and we set up all our stuff. And he goes, okay, now go on stage and start the show. And so we sort of amble onto the stage, and Jeff picks up his guitar, plugs it in, crackle, doing, some tuning, and I step on the hi-hats, and I check the snare some, and he goes, stop. And we're looking at him, he goes, okay, everybody come back. So we all get up, we take our guitars off, amble back to the side of the stage. He goes, okay, now listen, this is how it works. When you go on stage, you walk straight to your instrument, you sit down, you don't make any noise, you don't tune up, you don't hit anything, you don't say anything. You walk to your instrument quickly, briskly, put on your instrument, sit down, count off, and go. Don't wait. Don't hesitate. Don't say anything. Don't fuck around. Your guitar should be tuned. You should be plugged in and go. Like, make it as fast as you can. And it's like a blitzkrieg. You walk on stage quickly, put your guitar on and go 1, 2, 3, 4, and go. And that's all. Like, because you'll deplete the energy when you walk on stage and start to noodle around and tighten your cymbals and see if your pedals are on and check and see if your monitors are working. You dissipate all the anticipation that the audience had waiting for their favorite band to come on stage. And you're squandering this energy. So you got to walk on and go. And I taught every band I'm in, I make that case. Not a Surf has been doing it for a couple of years now. We walk on and go. There's no tuning or anything. And he was absolutely right. It was great advice. It was some great advice from him as a stage player.
Oh yeah.
But the Smithereens had a great energy, and they never squandered it. They always had a great energy from the word go. They didn't fuck around. They were very, very tight and powerful. I remember the first times I think I saw them up close when Kevin had me join the band. I think they were just in rehearsal studios. They went to a studio. I remember a place down in Lower Manhattan, like around just north of is it on Canal? I think not Canal Street. What am I saying? North of Houston. There was a little studio like on Avenue A. Context, like Avenue A, and like right above Houston, maybe on 1st or 2nd Street, and you had to go up a couple of like in an elevator. And I think I was there, and they were rehearsing to go on the road, and they just went through their set list A to B. They went through the whole thing for 45 minutes, and they played every song all the way through like they were playing it on stage. It wasn't like a half-ass sort of kind of we'll just kind of scattily boop 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 right through it. They actually fucking full on. They launched in. It was great. Like they had that energy always, all the time, every time they played together. It was really remarkable. And that was the thing they gifted me with, even through all the the difficult stuff and the personal conflicts or whatever there may have been. That was the thing that remained. That sort of their what they brought to bear as musicians together as a group. And they just and they gelled perfectly. Like whatever conflicts they had were completely gone.
I'd like to thank my dear old friend Severo Jornacion for submitting to that intense grilling. Really, there are few people whose company I enjoy so thoroughly. We're brothers, he and I, members in a very small club. We're Smithereens fans who also got to be in the band. So cheers to him. Thank you, Severo. My next episode, I'm excited for you to listen to my conversation with Smithereens drummer Dennis Dyken, a quintessentially solid, tasteful yet forceful rock band drummer of the highest order, a tractor of groovy, swinging intention. My friend Dennis Dyken, please tune in till the next time. Good night from everybody here at A Hard Day's Late Night with Ira. Thanks to the Ira-lettes for doing the backup singing. Take it, ladies.
It's a hard